stuff.
Welcome back to the Pastor Pod. We're excited you're with us for another episode. We're on episode 49, and here with my good friend Jay Mudd. If you're new with us, I'm Josh, pastor church down in Southwest Florida called The Bridge. And Jay, glad you're here again for another episode.
Yeah, good to be here and ready, excited to talk. 49. Think about that for a minute. 49. I feel old now. Like 49 weeks of talking on the Pastor Pod.
Yeah, we're almost 50. I mean, this is a big deal, guys.
Almost 50. 52 would be 52 weeks of content. We've been doing this. Last week, Josh, we celebrated you. There was a post about it and everything. We celebrated 1 year of the Pastor Pod.
Yeah, it's our podversary.
Podversary. Is that an official thing? Podversary?
Well, yeah, you sent me the picture. Yeah. The Anchor, app said, well, it's your podversary. It's the first time you published an episode. And I was like, it's been a year. That's pretty awesome. I didn't.
And I think the average podcast, you remember that statistic I told you a long time ago? I can't remember what it was. Like the average podcast only makes it like, a couple weeks.
It's like 6 or 7, 4 or 5 weeks.
6 or 7 weeks. And here we are, episode 49. So
we're breaking all the records.
Big celebration taking place.
I mean, this is a big deal. We're going to have to go to Disney World.
Disney World. That's right. I think we need to do a giveaway right here on the fly, Josh. I think we need to do a giveaway.
Okay.
Right now on the fly.
I like giveaways.
All right.
Right
so
now,
it is
for those listening.
It is pumpkin season. It is pumpkin season.
It is pumpkin spice season for all the ladies out there.
Okay.
Well,
it can be
I guess you
spice.
Could. Well, that's not fair. That's not fair. Anyone can drink pumpkin spice, but will you agree that most of the ladies especially in Florida where it's like still 89 degrees and they're wearing their fall attire, drinking pumpkin spice, sweating outside?
So here's what I'll do. Here's what we'll do is, I don't know how we need to pick the winner here because I'm doing this on the fly. We did not talk about this. And I think that's part of the show is spontaneous excitement. But because it's pumpkin season, if you will email us, should we do email? What should we do? Email or direct DM us on Instagram or social media?
Yeah, or you can add us on social media,
at
the Pastor Pod. Yeah.
At the Pastor Pod, DM us, email us, whatever way you want to contact us. And here's what I want you to do. All you have to do is say, this was my favorite episode. And you'll be entered in to win, and we'll pick the first person to do it. The first person to add us or DM us or email us. The first person to do that will win a pumpkin item of their choice. It could be coffee, it could be Oreos, it could be whatever it is, and I'll get it to you. All right, pumpkin
this is
of your
so
choice.
Exciting.
Pumpkin.
This is so exciting, Jay.
Of your choice.
I mean, pumpkin items. This is good.
Okay, now I'm gonna cap it off.
Are you telling me that you're gonna send someone a pumpkin pie if they want a pumpkin pie?
If they want a pumpkin pie, I'm going to get it delivered to them. All right. Some kind of delivery service can get you a pumpkin pie. I will get you a pumpkin, whatever of your choice, whatever it is, because it is pumpkin season. And so here you go. Have at it. It could be a pumpkin donut. It could be pumpkin, whatever it is. There you go.
Well, you heard it here. You heard it here first, folks. And if you're a listener that listens right when this goes live at like 4:15 in the morning, you're definitely going to win.
It actually goes live at 3:00 in the morning. So here's the
3
deal.
o'clock? Oh God.
Pumpkin of your choice. All you have to do is at the Pastor Pod on social media of any kind. You can direct messages if you want to be a secret closet listener and don't want anybody to know you're listening, or email us. Okay. And the email address is thepastorpod@gmail.com. But we would rather you just hit us up on social media. Let us know your favorite episode. Now you have to tell us your favorite episode. There's 49 to choose from, Josh. There's 49 to choose from.
That's a lot.
So what's your favorite episode? Tell us your favorite episode. We'll email you. We'll send you. We'll get you your pumpkin item of choice. That was on the fly, Josh. We did not plan that. I just felt generous.
I love it. Let's do this.
I don't know. I can't tell from your face whether you're in shock, whether offline you're gonna be like, Jay, why would you do that? I don't know.
No, I love it. I'm just excited to see what people are going to ask for. That's what I can't wait.
Why should be a pumpkin? Just a pumpkin. And I have to figure out how to get a pumpkin to somebody in Utah that's listening in Utah.
What is it with churches selling pumpkins? That's always something. In every town, there's always some pumpkins available. It's about that time.
I will
about
say
that time.
my family, and this is a side note, we need to get to the content because that's what people come for. They don't come to listen to us banter around. But this is the season where my family right now, we just transitioned. If you're new to the podcast, we just transitioned back from Boston to Central Florida. So this is the season where our family's going, there's a little bit of tension. We're going, hey, we kind of missed the fall because in New England, the fall's the real deal. Like pumpkin takes on a whole new, you actually go to a farm and get a pumpkin, or you get apple cider donuts. Josh, have you ever
Mm,
had a warm apple cider donut on a
I
farm
have,
that
but
produces them
no,
themselves?
I don't think I've had it like you have up there.
Listen,
So
there's something about that. I got the opportunity just this week to schedule preaching in downtown Boston at the end of October. And I'm taking my daughter with me. She's got some friends that she wants to, hang out with. And we're going to go to a farm and get warm apple cider donuts because that's what you do. We're looking forward to it. It's something
we're looking
exciting.
forward to
So
seeing your pictures and video. That'd be great.
yeah, I don't know if I'll take pictures. I don't know. Sometimes I go through seasons of being active on social media and not being active on social media, which Josh, honestly, is a great segue to our conversation today. Look at that. You see how you did that? Did you do that on purpose? Did you tee me up on purpose?
I teed it up. I threw you a softball.
There you go. Softball. I'm about to knock it out of the park. Today on the podcast, we're talking about the role of social media, the pastor in social media, the tension, all of those things that take place because social media can be a great resource, but it can also be a very dangerous place for the pastor. And so, Josh, we were talking a couple weeks about this topic, and why don't you share a little bit about why you think this is such an important topic for us to kind of talk through and really bring to the surface?
I remember when social media came out, I was in college. Jay, you were at the same college I was at, but to be able to get on Facebook, you had to have a .edu email address when it first came out. I remember this new weird, what is this Book of Faces platform? Everybody has their pictures on there. It was weird at the time to post a picture of yourself. It felt very like prideful to be like, hey, look at me and like it and comment. I remember seeing my wife Cassidy on Facebook. So that was kind of fun to see our little Bible college, little people's faces starting to pop up. And just it's crazy to think now you fast forward to we have so many platforms and so many ways to share pictures. And I love the aspects of social media. I love the parts of keeping up with friends, seeing pictures of kids and things that we're up to. But I do think as a pastor, it creates some tension because never before in history can the people in our church get a hold of us at all times. Like I think back to my dad. My dad's 80 years old. He's served for many, long time as a pastor. He's semi-retired now. But when I was growing up, my dad, like there was a phone at the church and there was a phone at our house, but there was no cell phone. There was no social media. If you needed to get a hold of my dad, there was email, of course, that came out, but that was kind of new back then as well, like 80s, 90s. That was a new technology. But now everywhere we go, we have a computer in our pocket. We have access to everything. And so it creates a lot of tension. And it's a lot of opportunity. I love technology. I love the newest things that come out. I enjoy the techie stuff. I naturally enjoy that stuff. As a leader, as a pastor, social media can become it can become a real trap of a time waster. It can create, there's people that aren't always looking out for your best interests. There's temptation. There's all these different apps. And so we just want to have an honest, raw conversation today about how do we navigate it as leaders.
And I think this is important because I'm not going to mention names, but Josh, I think it is important that it's not hard for us to find examples of how at times social media has gotten the best of some great leaders. And how those temptations lurk around every corner, and you're watching and you hear a news story about another person who something has happened on social media, and it's hard to swallow because you're like, hey, because that could be just any leader who doesn't put up the safeguards or things that are necessary. So I think the obvious question that is something that we really need to navigate is social media. I mean, we can paint a horrible picture of it. We can also paint a good picture of it. So Josh, is social media good or bad? I mean, everyone wants to know what we think about social media. Is it good or bad? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think one thing's interesting. I've been kind of watching people that are in their mid 30s, maybe mid 40s. I've seen a lot like a shift. Some people like that had it right when they were in college, they're like now completely off of it. And they're like anti social media. They're like, oh, it's terrible. There's no redeeming quality. They're like typically super scared about their kids one day being on it, to where it's like a complete like other extreme. Then you have like the older generation, and they're all over it. Facebook, I mean, everybody's on there, right? You know, our great grandmother's on there, as well as, and a lot of younger people are leaving Facebook and moving to other apps. And it's kind of, that's a whole nother conversation. But at the end of the day, social media is a tool. It can be used for good or evil, right? I mean, we have all these different apps, and yes, they can become evil and become a temptation or an addiction. But social media, in my opinion, just reveals what's already been there. Social media hasn't created anything. It's just created an opportunity for human beings to show their Christ likeness or their flesh, you know. And we've seen that. I mean, we've seen just all the arguments and the political seasons. We've seen, I mean, just think of the last 2.5 years. I mean, you have COVID, you've got masks, you've got all the different what's fake news, what's not fake news, and all of that is a part of our culture. Like social media is now like one of the key ways to communicate with people. It's not just a little app that you have on your phone to share a picture, you know, of your family. It's now one of the main communication tools. So I think as pastors, as leaders, if we have a missionary heart, we're going to use tools to make much of Jesus and use it to redeem and make a difference for the Lord. But we also have to have guardrails, right, to know that we're using it and it's not using us.
Right. And I think I think it's really important to think about. You said a couple things that were really, one, you know, you see generations, you know, using it differently. Some are leaving social media and like, hey, this is bad. I just can't. I mean, I don't know where I fall on that, because I feel like I use social media less nowadays than I used to.
Mm-hmm.
I used to use it more. I go back and look at some of my comments early on Facebook. You were talking about like when it first started. It's like my comments early on, they'll be like, here's your memory. And I'm like, ready for a good day, ... And I'm like, okay. Or Jay, you thought third person, because that's what social media used to
Well,
be.
back then they had a question, right? It was like,
Yeah.
what are you feel? How are you feeling today? Or what are you doing? It's like, I'm going to eat some food and I like this ice cream.
And the
You
world
know,
should
people
know.
are like, that's cool.
Yeah. Or yeah. I don't know why I use it less and less and less. I don't know why. I think sometimes pastors they get a little caught up on, you know, how many likes or hearts or whatever it may be you get on it, and things of that sort. I've definitely see social media as a tool, an ability to speak truth, the ability to encourage, the ability to support, and come alongside of people who may listen. In many ways, it gives us a platform to where we can encourage, you know, not only our people that we're around and that God has given us influence in, but also even others. You know, those high
Mm-hmm.
school friends that, you know, you're Facebook friends, but you don't know each other really. You haven't talked to each other in who knows how long, but they we went to high school together, so they know each other,
Yeah.
and you have a way of like communicating to them, because you know they may or may not see it. But then there's the algorithms, and we don't want to get into the semantics of it. But I agree with you, it could be a good tool and a good resource for individuals who are saying, hey, I want to use this. But you can also take that to an extreme and be weird on it as well, right? I think the biggest thing we need to really acknowledge is like, yes, God called us to be witnesses, God called us to do things, but like there's also a weirdness about it,
Mm-hmm.
where you got to be cautious at that as well. And so social media can be, but I think at the same time, what I'm finding now more and more is the in front of the how really crucial social media is. I mean, who would have thought at one time in our life we would see Mark Zuckerberg sitting before Congress, you know, testifying and having to give a report for something that took place on social media. Like that is where we're at.
Mm-hmm.
That is where we're
Right.
at, where like
Yeah.
it is such an influential tool that, he's being held accountable for this platform that he's created and what he allows to take place on social media. um
Mhm.
that's what we need to understand, is the impact and the influence that social media can have, the potential of what it can
Mhm.
have. um and pastors, that can be, for pastors and leaders, that can be a good thing, but it can also be a a negative thing. And so really, I think, I don't want to assume anything, but I think we can connect the dots about what good can come from social media. But I think what we don't want to talk about often is how social media can be bad. And
Yeah.
so let's think through that. For what are the dangers of social media, Josh? What would you say some of the dangers of social media are?
I think there's sometimes an unspoken, like maybe this might just be me, but I do think maybe as leaders, pastors, we feel the need to speak into everything that happens on social media. Like if there's an issue that happens in culture, there might be an emergency, and sometimes it's big stuff, or and maybe it's just uh, a news article. There's some type of fallout of a pastor or a leader, and there's this kind of this desire in us that, oh, I better say something, because if I don't say something, then I'm irrelevant, or I don't, or people are going to think I don't care about the issue. And that never was that was never on the radar years ago for pastors. I mean, they didn't run a newspaper, company. It's like we live in a world where there's extremes, and what I'm learning is especially on Twitter, there's just a lot of outrage. There's a lot of posting and arguing between leaders and churches that many times are secondary issues. They're not primary. They're not those gospel things. They're many times just little nuances and opinions. And then we post an article, we quote the article, make a comment, and it's really a subtle attack after to another leader. And what we're doing without knowing is we're breaking Matthew 18. We're actually posting, we're slandering, gossiping, and we're not following the fruit of the spirit with how we post. And so I don't post as much as I used to either, Jay. Like I post my family. I try to share about the podcast and things that I think can be helpful to people, but I really don't look at it like I used to, where there's just like desire. I need to keep it up. Like I need to keep everybody up on what I'm doing, but I think it's our stage of life maybe. But yeah, there's extremes like outrage. Everybody seems to be always outraged. I would encourage you not to post out of emotion. Before you hit post or submit, pray about it. Ask the question: Am I am I posting out of anger, or am I posting out of being spirit led? And is this argument or this issue worth it? Is this worth it? And the thing I've learned too, most people are experts on social media. They're not teachable. They don't want a dialogue, and they don't want to ask questions. They're really there. It's kind of like they're there to make their declarations, and then if you disagree with their declaration, then they go on a full-on lawyer route of, I'm going to prove you wrong. And it just, all the pastors out there, it makes us look like jerks, and it makes us look like we have zero love. And I know that you don't mean it that way, or we don't mean to come across that way, but for those that are outside the faith, especially if they see most of the interactions on social media, especially through pastors, I don't know, if I wasn't a believer, I'd struggle with it because of that.
So I would say, yes, this is the Pastor Pod. We speak a lot to pastors, but I also think it's
Yeah.
worth saying that it's not just pastors, it's men and
Yeah,
women of faith,
of
and how we
course.
hold
Mhm.
ourselves on. And again, I'm going to read this. What scripture keeps coming to mind is Colossians chapter 4. Really, this was kind of the heartbeat of me when I was church planting, and really as a pastor's, walk in wisdom towards outsiders, making the best use of your time. Let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you ought to answer each person. And it's this idea that really everything we do should be seasoned with salt. Everything we should do to take into consider the witness and who we represent when we're talking, and that includes social media. That includes every aspect of our life. And I can find myself, and I'll be transparent, I find myself reading sometimes and getting very, very frustrated with what's taking place. And
Mm-hmm.
there have been times where I'll read something on social media that gets me frustrated to a point where like I feel like I need to say something. And what I
Mm-hmm.
find myself doing, Josh, especially because again, usually when I get frustrated, it's people that I do know personally. And
Mm-hmm.
I find myself texting or calling and having a side conversation versus getting in the middle of it going, hey, I noticed this. What's your thoughts? But that is actually going to that person going, hey, I'm not going to try to just make this a
Mm-hmm.
thing where, we're making this a huge issue. And some
Yeah,
people give me pushback on that going, well, the people around us need to see us publicly disagree. Okay, I can get that. But at the same time, um, I want to
mm-hmm.
make sure that even the way I represent and how I'm handling with other believers, how I'm
That's
handling with
right.
people is above reproach. And we're
Mm-hmm.
doing this in a manner that is worthy to God, and that we're walking in that manner that is worthy to God in wisdom, using great wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
Because as you just
Mm-hmm.
said, there's the whole world is watching.
They're
And
watching, and I think you hit it on the head. It's the wisdom, and it's treating people with grace. It doesn't mean you're throwing truth out, but Jesus was full of grace and truth. And so, yeah, there's plenty of times I've talked about things on social media, and I've spoken into things, and we need to stand for truth in a graceful way. But every outrage uh, issue that people have, it doesn't warrant an argument. It does. I was talking to a guy earlier this week. I said, we've lost the ability to just have a conversation, to be
right,
able to say, hey, I might not see it that way. And of course, I'm talking about essential issues, right? Like small opinions or angles on interpreting certain things that aren't gospel issues. We've lost the art of simply listening and going, hey, I see where you're coming from. I see it from a different perspective, but hey, I'm still going to treat you with grace. I'm still going to treat you as someone that's made in the image of God and has incredible value.
right.
And you're not just wrong. And now that I've labeled you wrong, I'm going to cancel you. And this whole cancel culture of just, if I disagree with someone, then that person is now toxic, and that toxic person has to be cut out of my life. I think that's one of the biggest problems in the world today is we can't have a honest, gospel loving, like, hey, I don't agree, but I'm still going to choose to love you in Christ and not write you off. I mean, if we just simply did that, and I'm not even talking about social media, just in life, that's a big danger I see. And social media just exacerbates that problem. It just makes it easier, and people hide behind their phones or their laptops, and they can just be so strong and so, extreme. And then you meet them in person. I don't know if you've ever noticed this, Jay, but you'll meet people who are just so active on there, and they're just blowing it up, man. They got a lot to say. But then you hang out with them in real life, and it's like they're very quiet and they're very chill. And so it just creates a lot of awkward, unhealthy behavior. And so, yeah, there are some real big dangers. Of course, with our kids growing up, we're trying to figure that out. And you and me have talked offline about helping our kids navigate it when they get old enough. And
Right.
because it's not a matter of if they're going to use it, they're going to use it eventually. And then one day, who knows where it's going to be in 20, 30, 40 years.
Well,
Um,
and
so,
yeah, I think this is extremely important that we're talking through this, because again, the whole kids could be a whole nother podcast of how you lead your family through
yep.
social media, and we could talk for hours about that. And there is a danger of how we're representing ourselves on social media for the world to see. But Josh, there is that also this danger that's taking place that's happening in social media, that's happening where no one else sees. There's a danger of what's taking place behind scenes through direct
Mm-hmm.
messages, or what you're watching and what you're looking at, what you're filling your mind with,
Yes.
where we
Yes.
wouldn't class it as pornography. But the truth of the matter is, um, it's a a cleaner version of pornography, if that even exists. It's like this idea that we get it, we can fall into this place where there's lust taking place, there's things taking place through social
Mm-hmm.
media that
Yep.
is covered up because it's just on social media. It's out there for everyone to see. I know I can scroll through my social media feed and find things and images and pictures and things like that that like I shouldn't. I just have to scroll by really quick. And I
Mm-hmm.
think this is important that we talk on this, just touch on this. We don't have to spend a lot of time here, but we do touch on this because there's a danger there that's lurking in areas where no one does see on social media. There's a private side to social media that pastors can easily fall into and get in trouble, big trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, at the risk of ruining ministry, ruining marriages, ruining lives because of a temptation that's lurked there. I truly believe the enemy understands this and can use social media to attempt to destroy the church and God's people. He cannot take our salvation away, but he can destroy, you know, who we are as people. He can make us yeah, anyhow. I just think it's important that, I mean, what would you say about something in that area of, you know, the secret side of social media, that it's easy for us to point out the arguments and things because people can see that.
Oh yeah.
But
Yeah,
what we
it's easy to
don't want
see
to
that.
talk what we don't want to talk about is what's taking place that no one else sees. It's the things we're looking at on social media, or the conversations that we're having in private on social media. And I'm not talking just males here. I think women, we also
It's
need to
both
care about this as
sides. The
well, because
statistics say, yeah.
yeah, there can be an easily comparison game that's taking place where all of a sudden you're watching someone else's life develop and you become jealous and envious, and you are beginning to now you're beginning to covet someone else's life. And, well, I wonder if I did this. I wonder if, you know, I married the right person. All of these things can happen as you look at
Yep.
social media as it's in there. These are great dangers that, yes, they're not as noticeable until they become noticeable, you know, until
Yeah.
it comes up and it comes out in this weird way of like, why is this happening? Well, it's because it's been lurking
Yeah.
and building up over time. This is a great danger of social media that is harder to see, but is absolutely happening.
It's insidious because it's like you said, behind the scenes. And I think I would look at it as the slow fade. So many leaders and just people in general that have fallen into pornographic addiction, to direct messaging people they shouldn't be, building an emotional attachment to someone that's not your wife or your husband, or you know, and it goes beyond that. But it's that slow fade of losing your boundary and losing your integrity. And so one thing I would encourage is make sure your spouse and your trusted friends have access to your social media, being able to log in, look at, be able to see it at any time. Like Cassie has all my passwords. She knows it's all transparent. There's nothing to hide. I really try to avoid personal messaging with members of the opposite sex. Like if it's someone that writes a question to me, or you know, something responding to something on social media, I try to answer really abruptly, like real clearly, but not continue in a conversation, because it's like texting too, though. I mean, texting is a whole nother thing as well. We didn't have texting, you know, so many years ago, where people can just access, if they have your number, they can get a hold of you anytime they want. And so we've got to set boundaries with how we respond when it comes to Instagram, when it comes to Facebook, Twitter. Have those boundaries. And here's the thing: if you have an addiction, if it's like an area of your life where you just cannot help it when it comes to looking at things that are sexual, or they're just sinful, you don't need social media. Like it's not an absolute. Like you don't have to have social media. Like you don't have to have apps to be a good pastor, a good person. So if you have to set boundaries that really are extreme to protect your heart and your family and your marriage, do it. Be willing to do whatever it takes to develop healthy boundaries and guardrails.
And
But
again, that
yeah.
goes that goes beyond even just your computer. It's your phone as well, right? Because again, people can look at your computer all day long, but what's on your phone? I know some pastors and leaders who they refuse to have a smartphone. Now, you know, they refuse to. They'll have they still have, and you can still get it at Verizon. You can still get it at AT. You can still get a flip phone. You can still get them. They still exist. Most people don't
They're
have
still
them.
out there.
Most people don't have them, but they still exist, and some people use those. And I don't think if you know what you need to do, that's not a bad thing, right? You were talking earlier, you know, you said it's a slow fade. I was reminded of a C.S. Lewis quote that says, you know, the safest road to hell is a gradual one, the gentle slope, the soft underfoot,
is.
without sudden turnings, without milestones, without signposts. And I think that's the thing, is most times we don't come to a point where we're willing to admit that we're struggling until it's too late. Like it's already,
Mm.
the ball is so big and the snowball is coming so strong that it's already disrupting our lives. And when I say too late, I'm not saying that there's no way to turn and there's no forgiveness, there could be no repentance. I'm not suggesting that at all. What I mean by that
Hmm.
is too late is the snowball is so big, it's gotten so big and so out of control that it's already causing that disruption in your life.
Hmm.
And at this point there's serious consequences that have to be faced, versus acknowledging it early on and being willing
Yes.
enough to say, hey, I think there might be a problem here, going to your spouse and saying, hey, I want to make sure there's this
Hmm.
transparency, I want to make sure there's this
Hmm.
openness with when it comes to social media, when it comes to things like this. And so um I really do think this is a very, very important conversation that needs to happen, not just in homes, but on staffs with church leadership
Hmm.
and things of that sort, because of the seriousness the dangers that can take place, and how quickly can something can
Hmm.
go sideways. And so,
Yeah.
Josh, you mentioned a minute ago a few things. You mentioned the um, you know, uh, having your spouse have passwords and things like that. What are some other boundaries that you think can be put up? Are there other ones that weren't mentioned that can be put up to help protect pastors, staffs, leaders, husbands, wives, kids, things of that sort?
Yeah.
What are some other boundaries that can be put up to help protect us in this area of social media and the world that we live in, and
Hmm.
how influential this is?
Yeah, I use Covenant Eyes. It's a great app to put on your computer, your phone, to set up an accountability partner where it gives them a report of what you do throughout the week. Now, it's all about you being honest and having integrity and making sure you've plugged it in everywhere, so that you have, full transparency. I think that's healthy for any leader to be able to say, "Hey, I'm above reproach. I have accountability partner or partners. Like I've got my brother Jeff on mine, and he sees what I see. I see what he sees." But then also, like we're talking about, like your spouse should feel safe. They should feel that you are putting them first emotionally, not only physically, sexually, all the different areas of our life. To know that there's a safety and there's an integrity, that you are transparent. I mean, we talk a lot about transparency on the podcast, but there's nothing to hide. There's nothing to say. There should be no question mark of, why would you ever ask that question? If there's a question or a concern, there should be a complete, hey honey, here's the apps, here's what I'm looking at. I received this message from someone, and can you look at this? And that's happened to me many times, where I've received an odd email or request, or it could be a genuine need that pops up in the church, and I feel uncomfortable because I don't know how to go about it, or it might be something that I feel might be personal, or it might be not a lady that has a need. I have to be very wise in how I answer that, because um, everything today is so much built on perception and misunderstandings. I mean, you look at what's happened with so many pastors, that whether it's social media, whether it's uh, you know an unwillingness to be transparent, or you even have some big name pastors that have written tons of books on leadership, but for their whole ministry, they didn't have boundaries, and it caught up to them. And so I think for me, I've had to set some real clear boundaries, because I don't fully trust myself. I think too many leaders, pastors, even Christians, we really think that we in and of ourselves have all the self control and the strong will, that I'll never do what they did, or I'll never let myself get to a place where they are. And I pray that that's never the case, and that should never be our mindset. But we're all flawed, and I'm imperfect, and I'm a human being. I mean, I have temptations. I have to guard my eyes. I have to protect what I look at and what I scroll, and be completely transparent with my wife, so that she knows, and the same as for her, that we are together to walk through life and be have integrity, and know that we're not going to live a fake life. We're not going to fake it. We're not going to try to manipulate the marriage, or people. We're going to be upfront, honest, um, because at the end of the day, I think that's true love. When we're trying to love people, is when we're seeking to have integrity and character, to put their needs where they need to be, but also guard our heart against, sometimes people have bad motives, and sometimes there's a lot of sin and attacks on leaders, and Satan hates the church. He hates all of us that want to follow Jesus, and so he'll throw a lot of curveballs, and we need to be ready to watch out.
Yeah, for sure. Such an important. We could go.
I feel like I just rambled for like 5 minutes, but thank you for listening, Jay.
No, I listen. Don't thank me. Thank everyone who is listening. No, I'm joking. Listen, it's good. This is a good, healthy conversation. I hope it sparks conversation. And in fact, I hope we can have a conversation about what this looks like on the other end, because I think the biggest reason why pastors and leaders struggle to come forward or to even have these conversations is what the repercussions might be if they are struggling in any kind of way, and what that would cost them, and what that looks like. Because again, we talked about that snowball getting, or that ball rolling so far before its destruction. I think many pastors could have and would have said something if there was a safe place to say it, and they know it wasn't going to cost them everything, and they weren't going to risk the cancel or whatever it may be. Because there is a concept to where it doesn't disqualify you to have temptation in your life. We're all going to have temptation in our life. What disqualifies us is when that temptation goes to a point where we act on that temptation. This is what disqualifies us. And so, is there a safe place in our churches, creating safe places for pastors and leaders to be real and transparent about, hey, look, this is something I need to wrestle through, and giving them the opportunity to do that without canceling them, firing them, letting them go, whatever it may be. And I think that is something that needs to be talked about as well. That's a conversation that needs to be had, to where, what does it look like for a church to create that type of space where there is forgiveness, there is grace, and there is freedom, because they haven't been disqualified for the role that they're doing. It's more along the lines of they're human beings at the same time, and they're wrestling. You just said a minute ago, I don't trust myself. We make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. So what does it look like for us to create a space where a pastor or a leader can actually have that conversation before it gets to the point where they can't handle it anymore, in a safe space?
Yeah. And when I say I don't trust myself, what I'm really saying is, ultimately the Bible says trust in the Lord with all your heart, right?
Correct.
And not lean on your own understanding, and also guard your heart. So for me, I never in a million years would think or ever think I would make an unwise decision that would hurt my family, my wife, or my ability to be a pastor and be faithful to finish, what he's called me to do. But we need to be honest and be able to say, that could be me. And I think if we have an honest, authentic, hey, listen, I am flawed and I need Jesus. I need people in my life. I need friends to speak truth and to lovingly say, hey, I can see you going off the rails here. Let me help you. Let's get some healing. Let's set some healthy boundaries. We all need that. It's not like, oh, just certain people need that. We all need that, whether you're a pastor or whether you're in a church, whether you're leading in any realm of your life. We all need healthy relationships that love us. And like you said, Jay, a safe place. That, to me, that's to know you're not just going to be automatically condemned for having a temptation or a struggle. Because if the statistics are true, just about everybody in the church is struggling with something, whether it's pornography, social media addiction, or just media in general, TV shows, movies, media, right, and entertainment. It's a full-time job now to protect our kids and give them, clarity on what is healthy and what isn't.
Well, again, that is a whole nother conversation about leading your kids and all. I will say this, just because I think it's important. It's come up enough to where we talk about kids, is setting those boundaries for your kids is super, super important. It's not a matter of whether they're going to get on social media. They're going to get there. It's part of life. It's going to happen. And parents, you have a unique opportunity to guide them through that. And so make sure you take the time to do the research and figure out how you can set those boundaries up. But Josh, the reality is this is not going away. This is a topic that we can talk about, that we need to have a conversation about, that needs to continue to be talked about. And so I'm glad we can have it here on the Pastor Pod. I'm glad if you're listening and you're driving into work, you're working out, whatever time of place you listen to the Pastor Pod, I'm thankful that you're willing to be a part of the conversation. We'd love to hear from you. Maybe this has hit a button and you're like, hey, I'd love to know more about this. Maybe you're looking for a safe space. Josh, listen, I'd like to speak for both of us that we'd love to be that safe space. We're not at your church. We don't have any control over your church. We just want to be a safe space. And so I want to encourage you to reach out. I'd love to chat with you, talk with you offline. Josh, I think I can volunteer you to do the same. Please reach out if there's anything we can do for you. We'd love to come alongside of you. Anyhow, so we can have this conversation all day long, Josh, but for another time, we'll continue this conversation. But I want to thank everybody for listening to the Pastor Pod this week. Next week, we have another guest, Josh. A familiar name around the Pastor Pod. I'm not going to say it because, things might change, but it's a familiar face on the Pastor Pod, someone that I know both you and I, we look up to. And so I want to encourage you back for that conversation next week as we have another guest on the Pastor Pod. And I know we look forward to listening and learning from our guests. And then just a little follow-up. Again, if you're listening to Pastor Pod, you're a faithful listener, reach out to us. Let us know your favorite pumpkin item, and we'll get that to you. All right. So Josh, another good week. Thanks for the conversation, the insight always from you. Thanks for listening to Pastor Pod. Have a great weekend. Hope to see you back next week right here.